Hey, welcome back to Next Third, Best Third. I'm David Fenwick, your founder and your host, and today I am so excited to have my friend Lisa Archer here. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do a deep dive. It may go real deep, but what we're going to do is we're going to give you tools and really set you on a path to what real health and wellness looks like. We're talking about emotional, physical, spiritual, the whole thing. And Lisa's going to take us down the road with our thought life and the power of our thoughts and what we agree with. She's going to talk to us about mineral balancing and the importance of that. But I love your motto that you're not broken,
you're out of balance.
You're out of balance. So Lisa, let's just jump in. Where do you want to run with this?
Yes. Well, I guess I should tell people a little bit about me so they know why I'm sitting here.
Sure.
So I am a board-certified master herbalist. I am a clinical homeopath. I am a functional medicine certified health coach. And I am a root cause protocol consultant. So I do mineral balancing. So very much all health and wellness related, but I'm also pursuing my naturopathic doctorate at the moment. So I will be Dr. Lisa in a number of years.
So much, but I love that. I love the path because, we talked, and 7 years ago I started on my journey, and so much of my journey has been trying to get functionally healthy, right? And addressing my thought life and my emotional well-being and all these things. And this is your specialty.
Yes. And you absolutely have to start at the bottom, which is your emotional and your thought life and all of that, which, obviously you and I are both believers. So we know scripture says, beloved, I wish that you'd be in health, even as your soul prospers. Your soul has to prosper.
Right.
So there's so much wrapped up in our thoughts, in our words, in our nervous systems being at peace. Because, I know this very well from my own journey. The reason I do what I do now is because of the journey that I've been on that started 15 years ago where, we'll get into this at some other time, but I literally almost died. And so you can do all the right things, but if you have emotional upheaval in your life, that will be a roadblock to your body expressing itself the way that God designed and created it.
Right.
So that's part of being in balance.
It's interesting because my journey started with being broken down, right? And here your journey really started being broken down, facing death, literally. And then we start to slowly build, laying a foundation. And that's what I love when we talked yesterday, and you were telling me where you wanted to go with this is about laying the foundation of your what are you thinking about? What are you speaking over yourself?
What agreements are you making?
So many of our listeners aren't Christians, right? They're all different things, but these truths, they're true across the universe, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. If you want to look at someone who speaks about these things that is not a Christian, but is a scientist, you can look at Dr. Bruce Lipton's work. And he has several books. One of them is The Genie in Your Genes, and the other is The Biology of Belief. And it literally is the science behind how your thoughts and your words impact your biology and even your gene expression. So some people get all bent out of shape thinking, oh my gosh, I'm genetically predisposed to, whatever. But I always say, just because doesn't mean. So, and that, humor is my thing. So this goes way back. It started out just because doesn't mean was just because they sell that in your size does not mean you need to wear it. But it applies to everything, literally. So just because you have a genetic predisposition doesn't mean that your body's ever going to express that wrong.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Even modern medicine has really come in the last 10 years to understand that genetic disposition does not necessarily mean that you're going to see it manifested in your body. Where they used to always go to that, saying, let's look at your family history.
Yes.
That is becoming less and less and less, right?
Right. Well, and on my intake form, I do have a family history portion just because I do want to see what runs in families.
Right.
But oftentimes what runs in families are lifestyle choices.
Yeah.
They are food choices. They're thought choices. So genetics loads the gun, but your diet, your lifestyle, your thoughts, your emotional, all of that stuff pulls the trigger.
Wow.
So it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it doesn't.
But it's good information to know.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't mean that it didn't matter at all.
Oh, sure.
Right? But,
yes.
But they're just looking at it saying, you might have heart disease in your family.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you have to have heart disease.
No, of course not.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love about you is that you say you don't want to own it, right?
No.
Speaking of yourself, I have this.
Yes. I mean, throughout my whole journey, and I would tell doctors that I would go to, and I would tell my friends, I don't have anything. I might be dealing with something, but I don't have it. And that's what I tell my clients is they come to me and, I deal with people who, it's a gamut. So some people are just wanting to get, healthier. Some people are working on very serious things. And so I have some clients that, say they're dealing with cancer. Now, mind you, my scope of practice, I don't treat the cancer, but I treat the whole person. I help them to get to a place where they're healthier, so that their bodies can do what they are designed and created to do. But, I tell people, okay, so say, David, you come to me and you say, oh, I've been diagnosed with cancer. My statement to you would be, well, okay, so the doctor might as well have said, oh, David, you have jiggity boo. It's just a word.
Right.
And that's what I tell everybody. It's a label that is for a collection of symptoms, which at the bottom of that is imbalance. So I tell people, it's information. Take it as a piece of information. Okay, all right, so I have this piece of information. Well, now what do we do with it? How do we fix it? If your car was broken, if your car had an issue, you'd take it to the mechanic and the mechanic would diagnose it and figure out what would be needed. Okay, so all right, we need to change the spark plugs, or you haven't had your oil changed in a while, and you start working on the foundational things to make sure that your car runs well. And then after that, it can run smoothly and have, a long life. But
my story, which you don't really know my story, but my story was, 7 years ago, my life just fell apart, and I was physically, emotionally, mentally, I was just a wreck, right? I was just a wreck. And I had people in my life who just rallied around me. And one in particular, he said, David, he says, you have to do the work, and it starts with self-care, And for me, that was hard because I've said this on different podcasts. I never really embraced loving myself.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so self-care meant, wait a minute, I had to find affection for myself. I was worth taking care of, right?
Yes.
But once I started doing it, and I'm talking about simple things like going for walks, drinking water, watching what I'm eating, sleeping well, right? Little by little, it all started to build upon, and next thing you know, I'm doing better today than I've ever done in my life.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I call that low-hanging fruit. And that's where I start with, with my clients. We talk about low-hanging fruit. It's all those things. It's all the lifestyle things. It's the easy things, the free things that you can do. Even down to, I have one client that, she and I talked, and the things that she was working on, as I listened to her, I realized she wasn't taking time for herself. She was what most women are, which is, I need to make sure everybody else is okay.
Yeah.
But then you have the adage of, okay, well, when the plane is going down, what do they tell you? They tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then help the people that are with you. And that applies in a health situation. So it's not to say that we can't take care of our family and we can't do the things that we need to do in life, but if the house is burning down, you need to do what's necessary to make sure that it's, you put the fire out. So one of the things that I had her do, I said, I want you to set a timer for 20 minutes every day. And I said, your kids are old enough. I want you to go outside and I want you to sit with your bare feet in the grass. So it's called grounding.
Yeah.
And so grounding is amazing because it helps to calm the nervous system. It reduces inflammation in the body. It helps to just reset so many things. And I said, I just want you to go out there. And I said, I want you to tell your kids, hey, for 20 minutes, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to, just do my thing. Y'all go play. And I said, just do that. Sit there and then breathe. Just deep breathing.
So grounding, right? Yes. Something that I've been doing, but tell our listeners why is grounding good, right? What's the
Oh my gosh, grounding's amazing. And so, okay, You know how when you go to the beach and everybody's like, oh, I feel amazing at the beach. And we hear about the negative ions that come off the ocean. So when we go through our daily lives, we pick up positive charge.
Okay.
So you can think of it like static. So you pick up positive charge. You can pick up positive charge from poor diet, so toxins that we take in from a variety of places. You can pick up positive charge even from your own negative thoughts, worry and anxiety, and all of that creates positive charge in the body. So when you come in contact with nature, you can do it on the ground, you can do it in the sand, you can do it by putting your hands on a tree. This is where the whole tree hugger thing came in. There's actual science behind it.
I used to love, when we had the house, we did a lot of gardening. I love getting my hands in the dirt.
Yes.
So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. I don't like food on my fingers, but I will play in the dirt.
Right.
I love gardening like that. You feel amazing because what you're doing is you're discharging the positive charge from your body and taking on the negative charge, which then, once again, like I said, it lowers your inflammation. It calms your nervous system. It helps to reset everything. And so doing those things is just free, simple, easy. And if you make the practice of it, you find that you end up with more energy and less aches and pains, and your thought life is better.
So our bodies in electromagnetic fields and all this. Can you talk into that a little bit, because that's how we are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything about us is electric. There's current that comes from us. There's frequency. All of our cells vibrate at a certain frequency. Colors have frequency. Words have frequency. A healthy cell vibrates at a higher rate than a sick cell.
Okay.
So one of the things that you're getting from the earth is the current. So you are, it's like charging your batteries, charging up your cells. But the other thing that charges up your cells are minerals. Minerals charge your cells, charge the battery. They help to raise the electrical, capacity of the body. So, yes.
So this is something that we're going to do. You're going to take me on a journey of mineral balancing, right? I'm committed to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But talk into that. What is mineral balancing?
Okay, so our body...
And I know we're throwing a lot out here.
Oh, yes.
There's much, much more, but this is like just top level.
Yeah, we're skimming the
surface.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So what I tell all of my clients is we have 9,000 enzymatic processes that run the whole body. Those are run on minerals. So you hear a lot of people talk about, oh, my hormones are out of balance and, all these different things. But every single one of those is made from minerals. It's the foundation of our bodies. So I like to talk in analogies because it helps paint word pictures for people. So let's say you have a house and you have, your roof is leaking and you see some cracks on the walls, and you hire a contractor and they come in and they fix your roof and they fix the cracks on the walls, and for a while it seems like we're good. But then you go on, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, the roof is leaking again, and the crack from the wall came back. And the reason why is because you didn't fix your foundation.
Okay.
So minerals are your foundation. If you can fix your foundation, the body is designed and created to heal if you give it the right environment. And so part of giving it the right environment is giving it the basic tools that it needs to do its job, which are minerals.
So one of the things when I'm dealing, and of course I deal mostly with men, but half of our listeners are women, but in my work, I deal with men directly, is so many guys, especially as they're getting a little bit older and they're starting to get out of shape, they embrace this concept that the body is just doomed to decay.
Oh yeah, no, it's not.
It's not, right?
No, it's not at
Our
all.
body is created to function at a high level, to heal itself.
Absolutely.
Our cells even recreate at such a high level, right? I mean,
yes.
You're always recreating new cells.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Always recreating new cells. If you get the mineral balance, so a lot of issue is people too, they pick up toxicity. Unfortunately, the world we live in is very toxic. You get some people go, well, my genetics are, this, that, and the other, as far as inability to age well, or maybe I have a problem with detoxing or something. Well, all of that is mineral dependent. And so even from the standpoint of, there is one of my clients who had been in menopause, And I worked with her. We worked on minerals. I also work with herbs. And so I, gave some herbs. I love to use plant stem cells because they are the baby. They're the baby plants. So early buds, shoots, sap, seedlings. They carry the genetic material for the entire life cycle of a plant. They're incredibly powerful. They work on the DNA and the microRNA level like no other plant can. And so I did a very specific combination of herbs for her in addition to the minerals. And she messaged me one day. She came out of menopause.
Wow.
And, that would be one of those things as far as aging, you think, well.
You're just doomed. That's
it.
Yeah.
And so, no, my mentor in the plant stem cell realm, she's someone who like I, had dealt with cancer because that was something that I've overcome 100% holistically, but she had, and a big part of her journey was, just like me, the mineral balancing and the herbs. And she showed me a photo of herself the day, I think it was the day that she was diagnosed. And she was, I think, 49 years old. And, much like most people, you get to a certain age and you start seeing the signs on your face and your skin's not quite as plump and you start seeing a few wrinkles and her hair was not lustrous or anything. And then she showed me after working on herself for, it was a 5-year gap between the photos, but working on herself for 5 years, you would have thought she was 20 years younger.
Wow.
And so, it's incredible.
It is incredible.
Literally, the wrinkles reversed. Her hair was really lustrous and thick and long and just this brightness to her eyes.
Right.
And so,
So I want to address something because I know there's going to be listeners right now because once we start going down herbs and we start going down this path, everyone's been around the wacky people and they've, and the stuff that's poorly researched and shortcuts and all that kind of stuff. And in that's something I'm sure you have to fight against, because there's the authentic, right? There's what you're doing, which is, you're in deep study. I know that you're a researcher, and it's interesting because I have a very good friend who's big he's a doctor. He's I won't tell you where, but anyways, he's in a big position overseeing an entire practice of medicine. And he is now looking at changing and starting a business that's more functional.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just so cool. And I love talking with him. And I mentioned to you Dr. Peter Attia in his book Outlive. And I've said this before, but one of the things that caught me was he was a Johns Hopkins researcher. He was one of the top cancer researchers in the United States for sure. And he had a dream one day. And that dream was that he was at a skyscraper, right, a high-rise building, and eggs were falling down, right? And so he had a basket in his dream, and he started trying to catch the eggs, and he was catching some. And he woke up out of that dream, and he was thinking, what in the world is that, right? Now, he's not a spiritual guy. He's none of that. But he's trying to figure out what was that. And all of a sudden, he realized what he needed to do was instead of trying to catch the eggs, go up to the top of the high rise and stop whoever it was from throwing them down.
Right.
Which is what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're talking about. It's like going and defeating it before it gets out of hand.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So.
Oh, yes. But even after, I talk about it like being in a hole, right? So it depends on how deep your hole is.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about cancer. It's a pretty deep hole. I've climbed out of that hole and I did it 100% holistically. I didn't do anything conventional whatsoever.
Right.
And so it's proof that, like I say, if you give the body the right environment, it will heal. And so even when you get to a situation where it seems dire, the body will still correct itself because it wants to go to a healthy state. I have this 71-year-old client, and she came to me just utterly grief-stricken over the fact that she was in cognitive decline. And her younger sister and her older sister both had been diagnosed with dementia, and they were currently going through that. Her grandmother had died of dementia, and she just kept saying, but it runs in my family, it runs in my family. And I stopped her and I told her, I said, you're not broken, you're just out of balance. And I said, so first thing I want you to do is I want you to get a Post-it note and I want you to write on it, I'm not broken, I'm just out of balance and I'm regaining balance. And I said, I want you to every morning put it on your mirror in your bathroom. Every morning you get up, I want you to speak that over yourself. And every night when you go to bed, speak it over yourself. Mm-hmm. As you go through your day and you pass through the bathroom, I want you to stop and I want you to speak it over yourself.
Yeah.
So because it's the truth.
Right.
And so we ran some labs and I did the hair tissue mineral analysis. I figured out where her depletions were because all of us get mineral depleted. We all do. Stress burns off our minerals.
Okay.
And so each of us has a unique way that we burn minerals. All of us burn magnesium first, but then you have some people who are going to burn more sodium and potassium, some people who are going to burn more calcium and magnesium, and then some people, because of how long the amount of stress has gone, they become really depleted across the board. Mm-hmm. So, I looked at her burn pattern. I looked at the various intracellular nutrients. I put a plan together for her to get all of that settled. And then I used some functional mushrooms. So lion's mane mushroom is incredible for the brain.
Lion's mane mushroom.
Lion's mane mushroom.
Okay.
And if you can actually go over to Natural Grocer carries it. It's white. And when you look at it, it will look like a brain. So God does this in nature where similarly, walnuts are amazing for the brain. When you look at a walnut, it has the little undulations in it.
Yeah.
So it looks like a brain, right? So pomegranates are amazing for hormones, especially male and female, but especially female hormones, and it looks like an ovary. So there's so many fruits and vegetables that God has given us that they correlate with the organ that they look like. So lion's mane mushrooms are one of them. It's incredible for cognitive function, helping to create new neuronal pathways.
Wow.
I mean, it's just incredible.
It's almost like it's a treasure map, right? That was put out for you. So this looks like a brain. That's good for your brain.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So I gave her, that suggestion to use that in addition to all of our different mineral balancing. Mm-hmm. We worked on it for a little while, and I talked to her 2 weeks ago and got on the phone, and she says, I feel normal.
Wow. She
says, I feel completely normal. She said, my brain function is back to where it was before. And so, and I laughed and I told her, so we're just getting started.
Yeah. So mitochondria, right?
Yes.
Tell me, mitochondria is tied to the insulin resistance, correct? And diabetes?
It's tied to so many things.
To so many things.
Yeah.
The reason I bring that up is because we've done a few programs on dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And how in the last, I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's like the last 30 years, back when they started to really look at, saying eggs were bad for you, and they started measuring your cholesterol and telling your cholesterol's out of whack, right?
Right, which
Once
is
they started,
backward.
Yeah, introducing cholesterol medicines. Oh, gosh. Since then, dementia and Alzheimer's has gone up 300 times.
Right.
And they're tying it now and calling it type 3 diabetes, right?
Yes.
And so it's like the things, when we talk about going back and embracing, or for maybe the first time entering into a real holistic and real functional lifestyle.
Right.
We have, I'm just going to say it, we've bought into a system that doesn't necessarily want you better.
Right.
They just want to continue you taking medicine.
Yes. Yes. Well,
now that's a can of worms, and I bet that's,
oh my gosh.
Maybe we'll talk about that another time.
Yes. Well, and that's why when we were talking before, I mentioned that I don't really have the best business model because people come see me and then they get better and then they don't.
You don't see them anymore.
But that's fine because when my journey started 15 years ago, literally, I couldn't walk, and that's a whole other story, and we'll do that some other time. But I pulled myself out of the recliner, and I laid face down on the floor, and I said to God, what is this for? It wasn't a why me moment. I had this moment of, okay, this is for something, because once upon a time, I was a dinner theater actress, comedic dinner theater actress. I was a runner. I played tennis. I was a very active mom, and overnight they wanted to write me as permanently disabled. I mean, just overnight. And that was from a medical mistake that was made. So I pulled myself out of the recliner. I laid on the floor and I said, God, what is this for? And this was a moment where I've had a number of these moments where it was almost audible. And when he gives me that level of, when you have the audible voice of God or close to it, it's because you're embarking on something that you really, really, really need to certainly know that this is what the answer is. And his response to me was, it's to prepare you for future glory. So fast forward 15 years later, and this is what I do. And I had told the Lord, I said, make this be worth something, or else it's just obnoxious suffering for no reason. And he's made good on that.
So again, for those of you who might not embrace our faith, it's so real to me because I remember when I was going through my pain 7 years ago, the one thing I did talk to God about saying, hey, this isn't fair. I don't like it. But the one thing I told him, I says, whatever you do, don't waste any of the tears. Don't waste any of the pain.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And he's redeemed it.
Yes.
And that's what's happening in your life and now into the lives of so many.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is, that is absolutely the joy of my life. I'm not, I've told you before, my dinner theater actors days were so much fun and I loved that period of my life. But the fun that I get to have now is so rewarding. Yeah. When I see people get well and live strong, healthy lives.
Absolutely.
It's total redemption.
I'm the same way. I'm not doing your end of it, right? Sure. I'm working from a different angle.
Yeah, exactly.
But to see the people respond and the lights go on and they start making the changes, oh my gosh, there's nothing as rewarding as that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yes. Because, wow, we have so much purpose. Each of us have so much purpose.
That's right.
And we come into life I give people this analogy where, so the Queen of England, she's passed away now. I always give the analogy of, so the Queen of England, when she was little bitty, she always knew she would be queen. And so she had this pedigree of, okay, she took classes. You sit this way, you stand this way, you curtsy this way, you hold your cup this way, you speak this way, all of it.
Right.
So she, got to the point where she became the woman that was the queen. And you never would have expected her to show up at an event in jeans and a, neon green t-shirt and a ball cap on backwards because she was the queen. She knew who she was. Yeah. And part of the problem that we all have in life is we've had so much come against us. The messages that the world tells us, the crises and traumas and things that we go through.
Right.
And they speak something to us. They preach to us. And it's not truth. It's lies.
I didn't know we'd go down this path, but so much of what we do, we address identity issues.
Oh, gosh,
the things that lie against you. And, when you're there saying, my identity is I've got arthritis. I can't exercise anymore.
Right.
This is just my lot in life.
Right.
We're buying into a lie.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and the other thing is, as you speak those things over yourself and even your thoughts, you're like what I mentioned before about the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, the biology of belief and the genie in your genes. Your body's listening to you. Your thought life is creating the reality of how your body's going to express. But when you start speaking it out, so there's Dr. Emoto. He's a Japanese scientist. He did the Japanese water study of 94.
Okay.
And what he did was he took a container of water and he parsed it out into different petri dishes, and each petri dish had a different word written on it. Some of them were wonderful, beautiful, life-giving words, affirming words, and then others were words of death and destruction and critical words. And so those were written on the petri dishes, and then he would speak over them. And you can find, this has been replicated in other ways. People do it with music and that sort of thing. But he froze each of those petri dishes. And then he pulled them out, and you can go online and search it. The ice crystals that are formed were just absolutely stunning. The ones that were from the life-affirming, beautiful, encouraging words were these delicate, beautiful, just glorious-looking ice crystals. And then the ones that were from, all the words of death and destruction and discouragement, they were dark and twisted looking, not pretty ice crystals. And so what I tell people is, if your body is roughly 70% water, your eyes are more water, your brain has a big water content, but as a whole, we're about 70% water. If he could do that with those ice crystals, what do you think your cells are doing?
Right.
So as we start making agreements with the lies, which is yet another reason why I tell people, don't own your diagnosis. Don't, say it's arthritis, it's not my arthritis. I'm dealing with arthritis. It's the arthritis. Because your body's listening. It's like, if I say words of ownership, it's just,
that's who we are.
It gets
that's
who I am.
Yeah.
And it gives me permission to hold on to it. And then, yeah.
So some of you listening might have the same issue I had. And I mentioned this to you yesterday, is that I had a hard time sometimes with the positive speech. There was a time in my life I really did. And the reason is because, twofold. On one, I saw where I thought it went ridiculous, some people. Right. But the other is as I was thinking, well, this is happening to me right now, right? And it may be something like, I'm broke,
right?
And I'm going to speak and say I have abundance or something like that. But it took me some years, and now what it is, and I share this a lot, is we don't try to deny a reality.
Sure.
The reality is you're dealing with a situation.
Exactly.
But there's a greater reality.
Yes.
And that's what we speak over ourselves, is the greater reality.
Yes.
Right? That you're designed with a purpose, right?
Yes.
You're fearfully and wonderfully made, right?
Yes.
These are the things, right? I'm an overcomer. I'm going to live and not die. You know?
Yes. I call it preaching myself happy.
There you go. And joy and happiness is such a key to well-being and health.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Merry heart makes like good medicine.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And there's science to back it all up. That's the other thing that I get so excited over all of this is you can look at science and see that it's true, but then you also look in the Word of God and you see that it correlates with it. They're not at odds with each other at all, which is why I always come to this place of, when I learn of amazing researchers that have deep dive into, biology or, biochemistry, psychology, and they come to a conclusion that there is no God. And I'm thinking, wow.
Right.
Studying the body and studying health drives me to worship. I realize how not an accident we are.
Right.
And how incredibly crafted we are. And it's just, I get so excited over it.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
So we've got minerals and mineral balancing. So let's go back into that a little bit about what are some of the key, you mentioned
magnesium. Yes,
thank you.
That's
thank
big.
You. Yeah, magnesium. What are some of the others, and how do the lack of them or the shortage of them, how does that manifest in the body?
Oh gosh, a lot of different ways. So the 4 that you hear of as far as electrolytes, it's kind of the charges the batteries, are sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium.
Okay.
All of them are needed for energy production. But you can have one person with a deficiency in one mineral, and it's going to express in different ways because there's an interplay. There's an interplay with all the other minerals. So it's kind of hard to say, well, this one is going to be responsible for this. But, I will say potassium, when you have low potassium, you'll find, this is one of those, okay, we're just going to get into some clinical stuff here. But, people who go, gosh, I just have to, I drink water and it goes right through me. And I'm always just having to run to the bathroom or, having that urgency. You're probably deficient in potassium.
Okay.
So you solve that and it helps that. However, sodium and potassium play together. So I'll run a hair tissue mineral analysis on somebody, and I will see some people that have a higher excretion pattern of sodium and a really low potassium, which then tells me about their adrenals. It tells me about their stress state. And so you have to go at that more slowly. So slowly build up so that you get more of a balance together with those.
Right.
Magnesium is highly indicated for energy production, but it's also for calm. There's multiple types of magnesium. So magnesium malate is good for the musculoskeletal system, energy production. Magnesium glycinate, that's more for the calming, soothing, relaxing. You hear a lot of people talk about magnesium citrate that helps move the bowels. However, I don't use magnesium citrate because I look very heavily at the copper-iron dynamic in the body, which is kingpin. Like, it is kingpin of the mineral balancing. It is for helping to quell oxidative stress, for helping inflammation to come down, for energy production, your mitochondria to be functioning appropriately. All of your detox pathways have copper at the top of it, but you want copper to be expressing in a bioavailable way and not an inflammatory way. Copper gets a bad rap. You hear a lot of people say, oh, well, copper toxicity. Well, copper's not the enemy. We need copper, but you need it to be expressing in a bioavailable way. So anything that has citrate at the end of it degrades something called ceruloplasmin, which is a master protein in the liver that uncouples the bioavailability of copper. So,
By the way, you've lost me by now.
Probably. I know. I can see your eyes are glazing over. So, but you see how it's so, there's so many different aspects and things. And that's why at minimum, you can put trace minerals in your water. Like literally you should be doing that anyway. We need to, every bit of water that we drink needs to have minerals in it so that we're charging our cells at all times. But we can get out of balance in other ways. But that's why it's key to work with somebody who knows mineral balance.
Though you've lost me a bit, but you've lost me, this just reaffirms that this is real research. It's not this, you just rub this oil on you or you pop it, that's just, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So with the guys that I work with and so many of our listeners here, they're addressing things like high stress. They're addressing things like low energy, right? They're addressing things like, they feel like they can't get focused, right? And things like that. Is there some way that you would take them can you take us on a little journey here?
Sure, yeah. So let's pretend like you and I are having that discussion.
Okay.
So I would sit and I would talk to you about your life. I would ask you to tell me about your life. And then I'd hear about all the different, how your sleep is, how your diet, the demands of your life. But I would even go back. I would just say, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your growing up years, your years, in your early 20s, all of that, because it plays into where you are now.
Right.
Because as we age, we burn minerals. As we're stressed, we burn minerals. And so actually magnesium goes down in the body as you get older, so you have a higher need for it. So I would ask all those questions. I would do a hair tissue mineral analysis on you. I would run some labs. It's probably about maybe 10 to 15 line items. So I'd run labs and I'd look at we call it the full Monty profile. So I'd look at your iron recycling system. I'd see some intracellular nutrient levels. I would look all that together and then I'd put a plan together that's unique to you.
Okay.
So some staples of it would be, beef liver is incredible. Not everybody likes to eat beef liver, and I do not like to eat beef liver, so I do beef liver capsules. But it's probably one of my favorite things to use because it's so rich in bioavailable copper and iron, which are key to this whole thing. But it also has amazing B vitamins, and it has a lot of other minerals and cofactors and choline and lots of amino acids, like all these building blocks that your body needs. So I would say I would do that. I would tell you to be putting minerals in your water. I would be looking at things that might be interrupting your sleep. And if you need something to help with sleep, I would, discuss that. For focus, so I've already brought up lion's mane. It's fabulous. But I would be looking at various things. Why? Because sometimes it's an environmental thing.
Yeah.
So do we have an environmental thing that we need to address? I've got amazing vagus nerve exercises. So the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. It runs all the way from the brain down to your gut. It's very heavily impacted by stress. So there's some really simple vagus nerve exercises that you can do to help reset that. And I find that when I tell people to do that, they always come back to me and go, I didn't think that was going to make a difference, but it did.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just little tools. So we'd start weaving that in, and then we would kind of take the temperature, in a month to see how are we doing. Do we need to tweak anything? But it's all based on, I look at the individual. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we're getting close to winding down here, I'm just going to kind of open this up to you.
Yes.
Look at the subscribers, to our listeners, talk to them. What would you say to them about just to encourage them right now, right? Encourage them where they are in this life, because they're all at different places, right? We all are, but our listeners range from, young 30s all the way up into the 70s. Yeah. And what would you say just to kind of encourage them and get them kickstarted in the right direction?
Yeah, well, I would tell you you're worth it. You're absolutely worth it. And it's not too late to start.
Yeah.
And for the young ones, you might be doing good now, but taking care of yourself now is an investment in who you are in the future.
That's right.
So I know the episode about retirement, which the Lord actually reframed it for me and told me I was having to remake files in my filing cabinet, and I got to the retirement one. And when I went to make that file, he said, write investments.
Come on.
He said, because you're reframing your speech about everything else. It's not retirement, it's investments.
That's right.
So what you're doing now is an investment in who you are in the future. And I have a completely different view of aging than the world. So, Scripture tells us to do not basically make agreement with the pattern and the standard of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Right.
So the pattern and the standard of this world says, by the time you get to this age, it's over. You're just downhill.
Yeah.
And, the black balloons at the birthday, but don't agree with that.
That's right.
It's not.
I've shared this before, but we have this idea that you get old and die. Right. So you get old, whatever old is, right? You get old and then you die.
Yeah.
And yet there's a book I read years ago called Younger Next Year. And the science behind that, you may have heard of it. The science behind that says you can actually hit an age that you think you're getting old, and you can get younger.
Yes, you can.
You can get younger for a season, however long that is, right? And then when you slowly go towards the end, whatever the end is, right? And how long that is. But
right. That's absolutely true. And it all matters, your thoughts, your words, right? Because your body's listening to you, but also the information that you put into your body. And then I would say to listeners too, okay, let's say you are facing something. You've heard a little tidbit of my story. I almost died. They wanted to write me as permanently disabled. I've actually almost died multiple times. And I've come back stronger each time.
Come on.
And even like the really big things have been reversed in my body. So I always tell people, don't own any diagnosis. Don't own a label. Take it as information. Okay, it's information. I need to work on this. And then go after it. Work on it because you're worth it. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. We're going to have you on multiple times. This is so much fun. There's so much to explore, because truly, our hope is that you make the next third your best third, right?
Yes.
And you have to be intentional. You have to be willing to make the changes, right? But there's so much information out there. It doesn't have to be the way you think it always has to be, right? Just because your parents had this, just because society says this, it can all be transformed,
Absolutely.
And that's our hope, right?
Yes.
We're here to help people make the next third the best third.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Lisa. Thank you for being here. This is so much
fun.
I love this.
It.
And if you do me a favor, if you click the like button, comment, that really helps. If you haven't subscribed, please do. But share this with other people, because we really are committed to you and to those who we work with, right? And it's just going to get better and better.
Yeah, better and better.
See you next time.
Bye.